Anthropological methods are best for addressing small-scale local issues and issues where there's complexity, because they involve getting to know a small group of people very well and understanding how they think, how they respond to things. They don't involve a very broad sweep. It involves spending time with a small group of people. So it's a good way of understanding the complexity that they experience. So, for instance, anthropologists have addressed questions like, why do development projects that have been successful in some places fail in others? Because of specific local factors. Or anthropologists have looked into things like, why do religious movements take off among some people and not among other people? So it addresses that kind of complexity. I think perhaps the best kind of short catchphrase for anthropological research that I've heard is that it's about making the familiar strange and making the strange familiar. So that in whatever way, depends again very much on the context of the research, but in some way, by making yourself a novice, the researcher becomes a novice in somebody else's day-to-day life. And learns to function in that world, in that social world. So that has this kind of dual effect, because by learning there every day, it makes that strange to them. It brings that to their attention as well as to the researcher's attention, and engages people in commenting on their everyday practice. But by learning to live in someone else's shoes, as it were, it also makes our own familiar reality strange. It also raises questions about what we take for granted, what is common sense in different contexts. A really good one is John von Maanen's book, Tales of the Field. It's a very short book, and von Maanen is an ethnographer whose background is in studying organizations. So it's not all about that traditional fieldwork context. It's not about being dumped on a tropical island or finding oneself in the Arctic. It's a more familiar context. But he's experienced that ethnography from that point of view. But what he does in the book is he tries to cover various types of ethnography by looking at the tales that ethnographers tell when they come back from the field. So he compares various different kinds of ethnography, so it's quite a good introductory text. The session is really a taster session. There's a limit to how much we can do in 2 hours in terms of practical experience of ethnography. So it's more about discussing some issues. So what I try to do is to take students through a series of discussions about what ethnography might involve. So we talk first of all about access, which can be an important issue in terms of actually getting access to the field. How do you persuade people to accept you into their social world, and to what extent what the ethnographer discloses their research interests, whether or not it's ever acceptable to use covert research techniques or any form of deception, which is usually frowned upon. But at what point does simplifying your research design become deception? So we talk about that. We talk about practicalities, experiencing culture shock, isolation, things like taking notes, when to write notes and when not, in a social context, and we talk at some length about ethics, about ethical issues that can be raised by this kind of research. There are issues about informed consent, and whether there's an invasion of privacy, and what happens to the data afterwards. It's a tip that you're always given, that everyone gives you, but it's very difficult to actually take on board, which is to roll with the punches, to not be too prescribed beforehand about what you want to get out of this. So, because the fieldwork situation, even if it's a situation you already know, and mine wasn't, it was quite unfamiliar, but even if it's a situation that you already know quite a lot about, is always going to be unpredictable. So if you have very clear expectations about what you're going to do and what you expect to come away with, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, and that can be a lot of stress because you're there, you're doing field work, you've only got this limited time, one opportunity, and you feel like you're not doing anything because you're not getting what you expected. So what's really important is to be able to say, okay, well, it's not working that way. Let's do something else. And finding something else that's interesting, and then work with that when you get back.